Hey everybody, what's going on? Indypride here, and I wanted to continue that Dwarfs vs. Wood Elves discussion before jumping into my replay commentary. I am going to reiterate some of my points from that earlier video, for those who haven't seen it, but I am covering some new ground as well. So the matchup between the Dawi and the Azrai is, in my opinion, fundamentally broken for two main reasons. Number one, and I covered it in my Dwarfs vs. Wood Elves discussion video from a couple of weeks ago, the Dwarfs have resistance against magical attacks, which, right off the bat, renders half of the Wood Elves roster completely useless in the matchup. Why is that a problem? Well, because in the source material, Dwarfs did not have resistance against magical attacks or weapons. They had resistance against spells. Given the already extremely high armor values and physical resistance the Dwarfs have, granting their entire army passive resistance to magical attacks as well is completely unnecessary. It's a poorly designed mechanic. It wasn't poorly designed on launch, when only a handful of units had magical attacks, but the further we get into the trilogy, the more units and more factions and magical weapons for lords get added, the more stuff is going to end up useless for the dwarfs for no real reason other than the fact that they're dwarfs. Remember that the demons of chaos are coming. Most of their army does magical attacks. There is no reason they should be bad versus dwarfs just because. By the same token, there is no reason Grail Knights should be worse than Knights of the Realm versus the Dwarfs. There is no reason purchasing a magic weapon for King Loren that should be buffing his melee stats considerably should it literally make him worse versus an entire faction when you're spending money to make him better. Equipable banners you can purchase in pre-match that grant magic resistance to certain units would be a cool idea. That should absolutely be in the game. But free passive resistance for the whole army, definitely not. On the flip side, the matchup is also broken because the Wood Elves have an infinitely spammable magic missile with no resources tied to it whatsoever. It doesn't cost ammo to use, and there are no charges that limit how many times you can shoot it. After you do about 2 seconds worth of analysis, you can see why that might be a problem. Say you're the Dwarfs. You've brought a typical Dwarfen build of heavy infantry and artillery. Your opponent has 2 Waystalkers and a Glade Lord on a Hawk or a Dragon. You have literally zero way to kill their Glade Lord. You have zero recourse to fire back at their hidden Waystalkers, and you cannot catch them. So you sit there, and your opponent shoots magic missiles at you for 20 minutes because they don't want to take a melee engagement they can't win. Unstoppable force meet a movable object. And yeah, sure, it takes a while to kill a whole army with Arrow of Kurnus. It has a pretty long cooldown, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it when using a standard, non-gimmicky dwarf build, like the one you'll be seeing me use in a minute. The Wood Elves magic missile kills artillery pieces, and it kills artillery crew, and is being fired by things you can't shoot, or much less catch, or much less see. So no matter how you look at it, there are things on both sides of this particular matchup that are fundamentally broken and make it a chore to play. Again, Total War Warhammer does not need to be and should not be the same as the tabletop, but from a pure gameplay perspective, having free resistance to magic attacks is not needed for the dwarves to be a good faction. It's going to be seriously problematic once more magic items and factions are added, and it simply needs to be reworked. An Arrow of Kurnus needs to have a limited amount of charges per hero or lord. I've seen a limit of 3 being tossed around for multiplayer. I think that would be reasonable, considering its absurd range and that pretty much every other magic missile in the game is limited by the winds of magic. But I'd also be okay with it costing ammo, so say 1 Arrow of Kurnus costs 3 or 4 normal arrow shots from a Glade Lord or a Waystalker. But it's inherently unabusable and cheesy mechanic to be able to fire magic missiles forever in situations where your opponent can't catch you, and that's the reason why it's banned in tournaments. Wrath and Ruin and damage abilities like that aren't the same because you can't realistically kite forever with a Dwarf Runesmith or a Rune Lord. It just doesn't work. So there are counters to both of these things. For now, as the Wood Elves, you can load up on Wildwood Rangers, and with their overbuffed armor piercing, do pretty well in melee against the Dwarfs. And as the Dwarfs, you can counter Arrow of Kurnus spam by going for a rush army and running at your opponent. But you're slow, you still have no viable way to kill their flying Glade Lord who can spam magic missiles at you for the entire game. And the whole matchup is just kind of dumb, and like I said, broken in a lot of ways. So hopefully that stuff gets changed around a bit as we move forward. But with that all said, let's head on over to the replay. So, if you happen to be paying attention to that replay I just showed in Fast Forward, you would have seen something you don't get to see very often. An army build with Ungrim Ironfist at the helm and a whole lot of Slayers. Now, why would Slayers be good against the Wood Elves? Well, for one, they're fast, so Glade Guard can't run away from them, and they can close in a melee very quickly. Slayers are also good against large units, especially if something else takes the charge for them. So Durthu, Treekin, Treemen, Ancients, Great Eagles, and Forest Dragons, all the Tree Spirit units for the Wood Elves, are going to have a bad time if they get surrounded by a bunch of orange Mohawks. But even more importantly, Slayers seem to do really well against units that have armor piercing. I'll be honest, I don't understand the mechanics behind it. I would love for someone to enlighten me. I've heard that armor piercing damage is always applied no matter what, whether the receiving unit has 0 armor like Slayers or 120 armor. I don't know if that's true or not. All I know is that Slayers perform very well versus Bestigors and especially Wildwood Rangers, and they will munch through units like Eternal Guard as well. So if you're bringing them as your core, suddenly you're directly countering a lot of what the Wood Elves can field. Don't get me wrong, this build is a gimmick. What you're doing with this build is countering their counter build. You're banking on the fact that your opponent will bring a non-cheesy counter to a traditional dwarf army, as in that they won't be spamming Arrow of Karnas at you. One such Wood Elves army I've run into a lot recently that has given me some trouble as the Dwarfs is a rush army of Wildwood Rangers and Eternal Guard. It's nothing fancy, but as long as Wildwood Rangers have 37 armor-piercing damage, they're going to be very good versus the Dwarfs and consistently get a ton of kills. So what we're trying to do here is flip the script. Bring a bunch of unarmored units and some meat shields and rush, which is not what they're expecting us to do. And it works. In my game so far, even against traditional Wood Elf builds, it has worked surprisingly well. So to set the stage just a little bit for this particular game, playing with my friend Gojira, I had just beaten him into the ground with this same Slayer build and told him I wanted to do the matchup again. And I figured he would expect me to go with something traditional in the next game, but he brought a counter to my counter to his counter. So he brought a counter to my Slayer build, and we'll see how that goes in this game. So as with any Dawi build, especially one that's designed to keep moving like this one, Grumbling Guard with their AoE fatigue counter is going to be really important to keep my troops fresh and fast and in the fight, and you still definitely want a Runesmith for the damage negation and armor buffs and Wrath and Ruin. Take a look at these Slayers, wilding out on the flank, Glade Guard trying their best to run away from them, but 40 speed is too much. I will overtake these Glade Guard, cut them to pieces, and eat them for dinner, which will be real nice for me to get another archer unit off the field. And as the Glade Lord kind of provides overwatch, shoots in with the Arrow of Karnas, and the Glade Riders fire in from the flank, harassing the main line, I am actually going to completely surround these Wildwood Rangers, get a rear charge with the Dragonback Slayers, and they're going to be pinned between two very angry units of red Mohawks, and I will cut them apart. Really good engagement here, and suddenly that means I have 2 free Slayer units behind Gojira's line in a very threatening position. So as you see the blood just spurting out everywhere, I'm going to quickly wrap up that engagement and collapse in on the main line. I have gotten a rear charge off with some Dwarf Warriors. You do want some of those in the main line as well, just to soak up arrow fire, and they're one of the most cost-effective troops in the entire game. Dwarf Warriors for 450 gold is crazy. They are extremely good for the cost, and his Glade Guard are doing a decent job harassing. He has brought a counter build, like I said, so he's brought a lot of skirmishing, which doesn't necessarily always equate to very good versus the... Oh my god, you just saw a dwarf get thrown through the air. But a lot of skirmishing doesn't necessarily match up well versus a normal dwarf build, but he brought it because he knew or suspected he'd be facing a lot of Slayers in this one. So the Glade Riders are a great counter to Slayers. Glade Guard are a decent counter if you can keep them protected, but that's very tough when they're so fast and agile and have 40 movement speed. Getting away from Slayers rushing in at you can be very difficult for your archers, as you've already seen so far. So my Dragonback Slayers coming in with their AoE slow ability are going to prevent these Glade Guard from running away from me. And again, I'm going to be cutting them to pieces. You can see they're already wavering. Things seem to be going relatively well for me. But I did take a lot of losses on the way in. Those Glade Riders harassed me down and took out about 2 Slayers worth of troops. They didn't actually kill the entire units, but did a lot of damage to 2 different Slayer units. But I am pushing through the center and killing the infantry, which is going to be very important. You can see the Wildwood Rangers, even supported by the Lore of Life, have not been able to match up particularly well versus the Runesmith. Ungrim and my Slayer units. I've done a decent job of cutting them to pieces. But he has a lot of ammunition left, and he is starting to spread out and do what the Wood Elves are known for, which is fire in from multiple flanks, fire at the squishy, unarmored, unshielded Dwarf Slayers, and that's definitely going to be a problem for me, especially when he's utilizing the Net of Ammontok, which will reduce their missile resistance even further. Ungrim Ironfist in the center here, just going to work on some Eternal Guard, and he has made a big impact for me so far. And now at this point, I have pretty much cleared up the entire main line for the Wood Elves. All the Wildwood Rangers are pretty much dead. There's a handful of them left here or there. They will be coming back, but they've routed from the field for now, and I'm going to have to consolidate my forces and get everything together and just try to box up. Again, this is not typically what you're going to be seeing from a Wood Elf army against the Dwarfs. But the irony is that this is probably what a lot of us expected from the matchup before the Wood Elves were released as a faction. Just the Dwarfs getting completely kited, surrounded from all sides, shot to pieces, without being able to do much. That's really not how the matchup plays very often, but it is how it's kind of playing right now, because I don't really have a way to catch up to a lot of his units, because he's brought 3 of those Glade Riders who have made a big impact on the game so far. Glade Lord landing in the middle of my army. I'm trying my best to tie her down. Not going to be able to, and I'll just kind of have to absorb it. Some of his Glade Riders have run out of ammunition at this point, though, and he will be charging in, and the impact damage from those should be relatively substantial. I think they only have a charge bonus of 22, but just the fact that they're on horseback and are charging in, they do have some impetus behind their charge, and the impact damage is an important factor. It will do a decent amount of damage to my Dawi troops as I move in if I don't have my damage negation buffed up. That Rune of Negation 44% damage reduction going to be very important if I want to survive the charges that will be coming in. Glade Lord still making a big impact, doing a lot of damage with that Great Eagle. I really like the Great Eagle mount. It gives her so much more mobility than the Forest Dragon, a lot more speed and just ability to charge in. It's a lot squishier, and in this case, he probably would have wanted a dragon just to get that terror bonus on top of me, but to be honest, a lot of my remaining units are Slayers. They're really beaten up, but they're unbreakable, so that is another fantastic thing about this build. Nice Arrow of Kurnus going in there. Probably did a lot of damage, but the fact that a lot of my units are unbreakable means that certain things like terror won't make as big an impact on this build as it would on others. So there are definitely some very nice things about bringing a Slayer build. One of the problems is, again, you don't have a lot of armor, you don't have shield block chance, so skirmish builds, especially ones from Glade Riders, who I cannot catch no matter what I do, are going to be problematic. And he has done a great job so far of whittling me down. Balance bar is definitely shifting in his favor, and if I want to win this, it's going to have to be on the back of the Runesmith and on the back of Ungrim Ironfist himself, who, by the way, should definitely have a bonus versus large. I don't understand why that still hasn't been given to him yet by CA. I really think some of the original lords in Total War Warhammer need to get some extra love. Ungrim should be a beast against Durthu and Kolek and the monstrous legendary lords that are in the game. That's his niche. That's literally what he was born and bred to do. So please, CA, give Ungrim Ironfist a substantial bonus versus large. That is how he's supposed to play. Nice decapitation right there. That was awesome. And then he gets smacked in the face by an Arrow of Kurnus, which is not great for single target entities, but still fun to watch. Very entertaining to see the Glade Lord hit that Arrow of Kurnus from close range. Now, he's almost completely out of ammunition at this point. Nothing really left to fire at. I've lost basically my entire army, but there's still 8 minutes left in this replay. So you know something crazy is gonna happen. Lore of Life still buffing up some of those Glade Riders, giving them some HP back, but remember, it cannot resurrect models, so they will not be resurrecting from the dead, but it will heal all the units that had some HP left. And Ungrim with one massive cleave of that Axe of Dargo, bringing down 2 or 3 of those Glade Riders, and it has been an absolute bloodbath. Look at all the dead bodies on the ground, and we are still not close to done. Very interesting thing that Gojira could do at this point in the game. When he flies down and attacks Ungrim, or just shoots an Arrow of Kurnus, it knocks Ungrim down, and then that allows him to attack the Runesmith. Doesn't want to be fighting Ungrim 1v1. The Great Eagle is a little bit squishy. Glade Lord is squishy as well. So Ungrim in a 1v1 fight will destroy that Great Eagle. But still a very scary engagement. What he can do to abuse it a bit is use that flying mount, push me down, and then attack the rune smith when Ungrim is down on the ground and unable to attack. Multiple charges coming in from the remnants of the Glade Riders and from the Wildwood Rangers, and Ungrim is making his last stand here. Remember that he is unbreakable. Every single time they charge in, he is bringing down more and more models, and they will not be able to get resurrected. So every kill he gets, very important. Just got to make sure that the Runesmith and Ungrim stay together, which can be very tough when the Arrow of Kurnus is knocking him to the ground every single time it connects. Not doing a whole lot of damage, but still, things are looking very bad for me. Balance bar very much in Gojira's favor. Can Ungrim and the Runesmith hold on? We've still got a substantial amount of time left in this replay. So Glade Rider's still circling around. Gotta keep the Runesmith and Ungrim together. And here is the Spellsinger. Lore of Life. Very interesting to see what Gojira does with her. She's got to be running out of Winds of Magic at this point in the game. I think she overcasted Earthblood like 5 or 6 times. I don't know about overcasting, but she's used that spell a lot in this game. So she's probably going to have to get committed to melee relatively soon. The Glade Lord seems to be having some serious issues with Ungrim. Yeah, she can constantly spam the charge attack, but if she gets tied down like she is now by her own troops, if Ungrim lands an attack or two on her, she's going to drop insanely quickly, even without a bonus first large for Ungrim. He just hits like a truck and has a ton of armor-piercing damage. So this is a dangerous engagement here, and the Rune of Wrath and Ruin is also making a big impact as we move into the later stages of the game. But the Runesmith is going to rout here. That was a big blow, but the Runesmith made a huge impact on the game. Used that Rune of Wrath and Ruin at least 5 or 6 times. Did a lot of damage to the Glade Riders and the Wildwood Rangers as well. Another Arrow of Kurnus coming in, and the magic attacks from the Spellsinger. That was really cool to watch. And now Ungrim is chasing after. Glade Lord are going to put a stop to it, charge in and knock down the Slayer King. But can he hunt down this Spellsinger? At this point, it was personal. Really wanted to take the Spellsinger off the field. Killing the Glade Lord might not happen, but killing the Spellsinger is a definite possibility. Glade Rider is coming in to protect their Overseer. And can she get away from the Slayer King? He's still smacking around with the Axe of Dargo. And this has been an awesome last stand. I love the fact that he's unbreakable. It makes it really cool to see what he can do in the later stages of a game when he's one of the only few troops left on the field. And in this case, I think he is the last Dawi still fighting. Another attack into the Spellsinger. Gojira should be trying to pull her away from him, but I don't know if it was just a micro mistake or him trying to have mercy on me. Not really sure, but I think she's going to try to attack here, and this will be a final duel between Ungrim and the Spellsinger. She's floating in the air, ready to do a magical attack, and the Axe of Dargo getting raised high by the Slayer King coming into attack, and he is going to decapitate her. Spellsinger gonna go down, and if you want to see something brutal in Warhammer, if you want to understand the brutality of this world, all you have to do is look at the bouncing head of a Spellsinger from the Azrai, and that's all you need to know about the grim darkness that is Warhammer Fantasy. That was disgustingly brutal. Not every day you get to see a Spellsinger get her head chopped off. That was messed up. And Ungrim is still fighting now, still trying to hold on. Arrow of Kurnus smacking him in the back, and here comes a epic fight between him and a group of Wildwood Rangers. That's a lot of armor piercing, though. This is actually probably going to be a tough fight for him. 2 attacks, he's already killed 4 of them, decapitating a bunch of them. 3 more going down. It looks like there are 5 left. Can Ungrim carry the day here? Can he win this for the Dawi? 3 more left. 1 goes down, decapitated. Net of Amentok, not Net of Amentok, the Prey of Anathrama getting dropped on him. And 2 Wildwood Rangers left, attacking from multiple sides. Can he bring them down? No! He's going to get stabbed in the back, and that will be the end of the replay. An epic last stand from Ungrim Ironfist. So, again, I don't think that this battle in particular is the greatest representation of the matchup between a Slayer build and the Wood Elves, because your opponent typically is not going to expect you to bring a Slayer build. In this case, I just played Gojira. He was expecting the build, so he brought something that he thought would counter it. Did a very good job countering it. The Glade Riders were a brilliant idea. They did a lot of damage to me. You can see they each got around 80 kills, or at least 2 of them did. And the Wildwood Rangers still did a lot of damage in that game, still killed a lot of my troops. But the Slayers, and this build in general, will work wonders if you can catch your opponent off guard and go, if you're fighting against a traditional Wood Elf army, or fighting against a Wood Elf army that's going for a lot of armor piercing. Hope you guys enjoyed. Indypride signing out for now.